You've been performing for so long, you forgot who you were before the applause. You don't need a new identity. You need to come home to the one you abandoned. It's time to change the narrative. It's time to recognize who you are. You are not an imposter. You are not a mistake. You are not a placeholder in your own life. Today's episode is not for the faint of heart. It's for the person who has spent years doubting their own reality. It's for the person who learned to question their instincts, silence their truth, and shrink their voice because someone taught them, intentionally or not, that their perception couldn't be trusted. This episode is for the person who has been gaslit so effectively, they started gaslighting themselves. Let's talk about it. Gaslighting is not just manipulation. It's not just lying. It's not just denial. Gaslighting is the systematic erosion of your inner authority. It's the slow, strategic dismantling of your confidence, your clarity, and your sense of self. And here's the part most people never say out loud. You cannot heal from gaslighting until you name the source. You cannot reclaim your identity while protecting the person who distorted it. You cannot rebuild your inner authority while pretending the wound came from nowhere. So today, we're naming the culprit. Not to blame, not to shame, but to reclaim. Because the truth is this: you cannot fix what you refuse to face. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. And you cannot reclaim your story while keeping the villain anonymous. Let's start with the hardest truth. Most people who were gaslit don't realize it until years later. Why? Because gaslighting doesn't feel like abuse at first. It feels like confusion. It feels like self-doubt. It feels like maybe I'm overreacting. It feels like maybe I misunderstood. It feels like maybe it is my fault. Gaslighting teaches you to distrust your own mind. And once you distrust your own mind, you become dependent on the person who broke it. So let's ask the question you've been avoiding. Who taught you to doubt yourself? Was it a parent who dismissed your feelings as dramatic? Was it a partner who twisted every argument until you apologized for things you didn't do? Was it a boss who made you question your competence every time you succeeded? Was it a friend who minimized your experiences because your truth made them uncomfortable? Was it a church that told you obedience was holiness and questioning was rebellion? Was it a culture that told you your identity was too much, too loud, or too sensitive? Who gaslit you? Because someone did. Someone taught you that your emotions were inconvenient. Someone taught you that your intuition was unreliable. Someone taught you that your boundaries were negotiable. Someone taught you that your truth was optional. Someone taught you that your voice was a liability, and you've been living under that training ever since. Let's go deeper. Gaslighting doesn't just distort your memory. It distorts your identity. It rewires your sense of reality. It makes you believe that your worth is conditional, your needs are excessive, and your instincts are flawed. And here's the part that stings. After a while, you start doing the gaslighter's job for them. You silence yourself before anyone else can. You question yourself before anyone else does. You invalidate your own feelings before anyone has the chance. You apologize for things that aren't your responsibility. You shrink to avoid conflict that isn't even happening. You became your own gaslighter, not because you're weak, but because you were trained. And today we're breaking that training. Let's talk about naming the culprit. Naming the culprit is not about revenge. It's about clarity. It's about reclaiming the narrative. It's about saying, this didn't come from nowhere. This didn't start with me. Because when you don't name the source, you become the source. You start believing you are the problem. You start believing you are the unreliable one. You start believing you are the chaos. You start believing you are the issue, but you're not. You were conditioned, you were shaped, you were influenced, you were manipulated, you were taught to distrust yourself by someone who benefited from your confusion. So let's name it. Who gaslit you? Say their name, say the role they played, say the impact they had, say the truth you've been swallowing for years. Because the moment you name the culprit, you stop carrying their guilt. You stop internalizing their dysfunction. You stop mistaking their insecurity for your inadequacy. You stop confusing their manipulation for your failure. Naming the culprit is the first step in reclaiming your inner authority. And once you reclaim your inner authority, everything changes. You stop apologizing for your clarity. You stop shrinking your truth to protect someone else's comfort. You stop second guessing your instincts. You stop tolerating relationships that require you to abandon yourself. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop performing for approval you don't need. You start trusting yourself again. You start believing yourself again. You start listening to your intuition again. You start honoring your boundaries again. You start choosing relationships that don't require self-betrayal. You start living from a place of truth instead of fear. And here's something most people never admit. Sometimes the person who gaslit you wasn't malicious. They were wounded. They were insecure. They were threatened by your clarity, your strength, your potential, or your independence. And instead of rising to meet you, they needed to shrink you to feel safe. That doesn't excuse the impact, but it explains the pattern. Hurt people don't just hurt people. Hurt people rewrite people. And you've been living inside someone else's unhealed story for far too long. But let's take it deeper. Gaslighting doesn't just distort your past. It distorts your future. When you've been trained to distrust yourself, you start making small decisions, safe decisions, decisions that won't upset anyone, decisions that won't draw attention, decisions that won't require courage. You start living a life that's beneath your capacity because you're afraid your truth will cost you something. But here's the reality. The life you want requires a version of you that fear cannot manipulate. Your future cannot be built on the lies someone else taught you to believe. And this is the moment where everything shifts. Because once you name who gaslit you, you also name who you are not. You are not confused. You are not unstable. You are not too sensitive. You are not dramatic. You are not imagining things. You are not the problem. You are a person who learned to survive in an environment that punished your truth. And now you are a person who is ready to reclaim the authority that was stolen from you. Naming the culprit is not about staying in the past. It's about freeing your future. And here's the final truth. You cannot become who you're meant to be while protecting the person who broke you. You cannot heal while pretending the wound came from nowhere. You cannot reclaim your identity while keeping the culprit anonymous. You cannot step into your becoming while carrying someone else's narrative. So today, you name the culprit, not to stay stuck, but to get free. Because the moment you name who gaslit you, you stop being the character in their story and you become the author of your own. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin the work of separating who you are from who you've been performing to be, because it's time to stop performing and start belonging. Welcome to the work. Welcome to the becoming. Welcome to unmasking the imposter. Thank you for listening to the Impostor Phenomenon Podcast. If today's episode opened something in you, share it with someone who needs this conversation too. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to go deeper, get ready to join our community, where we're doing the real work of reclaiming identity, rewriting narratives, and rebuilding belonging from the inside out. Remember, you are not an imposter. You are not a mistake. You are the author, and your story is far from finished.